the hater has decided to debut another mini-series up in this piece. If things go well, every Wednesday will be Wednesday with the hater, and the series that we're going to be doing is going to be called Retro Review. Cuts this, where we review an old pay-per-view at the hater's random choosing and compare it to the current wrestling product. As you already know, the hater's still working on the reboot. The hater is always working, you know what I'm saying? The hater's always up to something. The hater's doing things. So the hater's also going to hit you with a nice little poem, you know what I'm saying? It goes a little something like this. Little Bo Peep fucked the sheep, sucked the horse, licked its feet. She tongued his ass so very nice, licked his balls not once but twice. Ow! The hater is also a part-time plagiarist up in this bitch. More like a tribute. But anyways, because the hater's always working. So the pay-per-view of today is none other than Backlash 2006. I don't know exactly how I came up to this, but I thought about reviewing a random Backlash, and then I put a randomizer on Google, right? I just did a random number generator, and the number that I came up with was 2006. I went and I saw that there is, in fact, a Backlash 2006, so I watched it, and I reviewed it for all of you. Now, I'm not going to pretend this was the best pay-per-view, but it was a solid 8 out of 10, and compared to today, it's a 100% 10 out of 10, right? So without further ado, let's get to it. The first match was Carlito versus Chris Masters. Remember them, cuckolds? Now, this match was basically a mid-card / undercard match, but it was nevertheless entertaining. First of all, the guys involved have personality. Carlito had a lot of personality during his first run, and Chris Masters, although he's kind of boring, his entrance makes up for it, right? He has a gimmick. The gimmick is this guy's built like a Greek god. He's the masterpiece, right? Now, again, I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you this was the best gimmick of all time, but it was a pretty good gimmick, and I enjoyed the match. The match was also relatively short, which was commonplace back then. I probably would put it around 10, 12 minutes or so, right? It wasn't anything special. Carlito ends up winning by pinning Chris Masters' bitch ass, right? The match didn't have anything really that special. I mean, Carlito goes for the master lock on Chris Masters, who just breaks it without any effort, you know, which was a nice little touch. But this was like just a normal opening match. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. After this, we are greeted with Armando Alejandro Estrada, who was the manager of Umaga. Rest in peace. It's going to be Umaga versus Ric Flair. The storyline is Umaga has just debuted, and he's destroyed Ric Flair. So now they're going to have a match, right? Ric Flair's an old man already. Umaga is in his prime. Umaga comes out. They lie and tell us that he's 350 pounds. I mean, he might be because he's a fat ass, but like, quite frankly, I never really understood Umaga being that big. He's like about the height of Ric Flair. Like, he's a little bit taller than Ric Flair, I'll be honest. And he's obviously fatter, right? But it's like, you know, he doesn't have much muscle, you know what I mean? So, like, fat weighs a lot, but doesn't weigh that much, you know? And quite frankly, if I'm being honest, Umaga's fat, but he's not that fat, you know what I mean? He's not fat like the Big Show's fat or like Viscera was fat. Nevertheless, the match was an Umaga match. It was a squash match. It was a squash match on pay-per-view. And the announcers made it seem that way. JR kept saying, like, I've never seen Ric Flair get destroyed this easily. Have you, King? And then King would be like, no, JR, I haven't. You know, they kind of took like a somber tone during this match. Umaga does the ass to the corner and hits the Samoan spike, which I think it may have been the first time he hit it. JR was like, oh, that Samoan spike-like maneuver, you know, which is now still a finisher. A personal favorite of mine. The Samoan spike to me is like the perfect finisher. It doesn't hurt at all, but it looks like it'll kill you. You know, it's perfect. So Umaga wins, and he's getting ready for his push. After this, it's time for the one and the only women's match. This was like a 5-minute match. It was Trish Stratus, who is a legend, versus Mickie James, who is the champion. Backlash is traditionally the pay-per-view after Mania. So Mickie James had beaten Trish, I believe, at the Mania, and now it's time for the rematch, right? Trish Stratus is like trying to get her revenge. She looks great. Mickie looks great. They're both good wrestlers. I mean, Mickie James does botch a lot. I mean, I'm going to be honest, you know, but they're both good wrestlers for what they were back then, right? The storyline is that Mickie James is an obsessed fan. It's a rehash of the Tori and Sable storyline, but with like 2 other people. And Mickie James had a better career than Tori, and obviously Trish had a better career than Sable, which is saying quite a lot. The match ends with a disqualification, but it made sense, right? Mickie James kind of purposefully gets herself disqualified, and that's what JR is trying to posit, but it's not clear, right? Because Mickie James is retarded, so it's not understandable whether she did this on purpose or she just lost her mind, which is, quite frankly, character development. That's all that I'm asking for in the modern product. I'm not saying we need like deep-ass development. We need fun things. This match was fun, and character development a little bit. I should take a moment here to note that the superiority of JR and King, which, by the way, it's not a slight on anybody. They are the greatest announced team of all time. My personal favorite. Second to them is Michael Cole and Taz, or Michael Cole and JBL. They both had great chemistry. Michael Cole used to be good, believe it or not. Which is why I find it weird that people are like, oh, Michael Cole sucks. And then all of a sudden they're like, now he's having fun and he's good. Like, no, now this is like the worst Michael Cole ever had. Right? Michael Cole has had very, very, very big shortcomings. Like, he doesn't understand wrestling fundamentally. He doesn't know the moves, but he does the work that he's supposed to do. Right? JR is better than him because he does the same thing better and he knows the moves. Now, that's why you had like Taz. You'd see like Michael Cole and Taz being a really good team because Taz would know the names of all the moves. He'd be like, oh, it's a Juchi Katami. And then Michael Cole would be like, and that would be like their entire thing. So the commentary in 2006 was like stellar. It was A+. JR and King just held it together, and they were just perfect at what they did. They added to the show. They didn't just explain to you what's happening. They supplemented it, right? This is a very important job, being the commentator, and quite frankly, you need really good commentators. But nowadays, we're saddled with Michael Cole, who hasn't improved at his job, and the cocksucker is like, I think he's like 60, even younger probably, so he's going to be there for like 20 years if he decides to keep his job. And then, of course, you have this string of secondary commentators that come and go. The most recent one is Wade Barrett. Boom! Oh, the Kavorka! Oh, you can feel the Kavorka! The Kavorka off LA Knight is something. Oh, Kavorka! Right now, this new version of Drew McIntyre, this new version, that's all he contributes, this asshole, right? After this, we had a great match, one of my favorite matches on the night. This went long, but long for the standards of 2006, which means it was about 15 to 20 minutes long by my estimation. It was RVD, the contemporaneous holder of the Money in the Bank briefcase, versus Shelton Benjamin, who was the Intercontinental Champion. Both these guys at this time were young. Shelton Benjamin, he was probably in his 20s. He looked like he was 41, and now he's 50. He looks like he's 41. You know what I mean? Shelton Benjamin has looked 41 his entire career. It's great. You know what I mean? But you could see the youthfulness in his movement, right? Like, Shelton Benjamin is still great. He can still do almost everything, but not as crisply, right? That's probably not because of age. That's probably just because of, injuries, just probably because of, wear and tear. But this match was excellent. Both these guys are incredible athletes. And more importantly, I should note, when I say they're incredible athletes, I don't mean they're incredible wrestlers. I mean they're incredible athletes. I'll give you a great example. There's a part where Shelton Benjamin puts Rob Van Dam in a Northern Lights suplex kind of hold. In other words, he puts his own head under RVD's armpit and then lifts RVD onto the top turnbuckle. A spot that happens all the time. But nowadays, it looks so shitty because you have someone like Pentagon doing it to JD McDonough. Both these guys are not strong enough to make this look smooth. Shelton is strong enough and RVD is strong enough. So when they do it, it's one motion. When Seth Rollins puts up Dean Ambrose on the top turnbuckle, it takes 3 minutes because they're not athletic enough to do it in one move. But these two guys clearly were. The match ends with RVD. This was a great finish too. Basically, Shelton, his gimmick at the time was that Mama Benjamin, his mother, had come to set him straight because he was basically turning into a jobber. Honestly, a great run. She wasn't there for some reason. Maybe it was right as she got fired. I don't know, because she had a very short stint. So remember it? And RVD had no gimmick, but RVD was the Money in the Bank guy, and ECW was on the verge of being created. So his gimmick was the head of ECW. Anyways, during the match, Shelton was the heel. He tries to cheat. He gets the Money in the Bank briefcase, which was painted with RVD motifs, and he tries to hit RVD with it. RVD counters, grabs the case, throws it on Shelton. Shelton catches it. Van Dam hits the Van Daminator and the 5-star frog splash, which is the best frog splash of all time, and pins Shelton Benjamin 1, 2, 3. The only problem with this match was that it was predictable. Clearly, the murmurs of ECW starting out were a thing. RVD had won the Money in the Bank. RVD was higher up on the card. So it would just seem really odd for Shelton Benjamin to become the Money in the Bank winner at this juncture, right? So it was predictable, and I knew what was going to happen, obviously, because I know that RVD cashed it in. But even when I watched this as a kid, I remember thinking like, oh, this is a little bit predictable. But whatever, it was cool. After this, we had a throwaway match, but it was a great throwaway match considering what it was. It was Big Show versus Kane. The storyline, one of the greatest marketing moves of all time. Me and my best friend talk about this to this day. I always wish him a happy May 19th. You know what I'm saying? So the storyline was Kane's movie, I think it was called See No Evil, right? Which me and this friend actually saw it. I thought it was actually pretty good for what it was. It's like a serial killer slasher movie where Kane plays Jacob Goodnight. I just remember that on top of my head, right? The movie was set to release on May 19th. And one of the promotions of this movie was that they kept talking about it on Monday Night Raw where Kane would wrestle. And the way they would talk about it is they created this mini storyline, right? This is brilliant. The mini storyline saw Kane always overreact and lose his mind every time someone would mention May 19th. He would go into a rage and he would destroy everyone that's near there. And then at one point, based on the vignette, he almost destroyed Lillian Garcia. Big Show came to save her, and Big Show was presented as the face. He was the former friend and former tag team partner of Kane. And his argument was like, Kane, what the hell's going on here? Like, calm down, And then he made the mistake of saying May 19th, and Kane was like, you said those words, and he would like lose his mind, right? And then he would attack people. So the match is a Big Show and Kane match. Pretty nice, pretty fun. During this match, I couldn't help but think about the Royal Rumble several years later when Batista came back, and in that Rumble, Kane and Big Show worked together to eliminate, like, at this point it was like corporate Kane, I think, to eliminate like Ziggler and other jobbers like that. People were like, I can't believe that they had Kane eliminate Dolph Ziggler. What the hell? Meanwhile, I'm thinking to myself, what do you mean you can't believe it? Look at Kane and look at Dolph Ziggler and look at the match we're in. So anyways, the match ends up being a no contest because as Big Show is winning, the arena lights dim, they turn red, and then Kane starts, quote unquote, hearing voices, which means that the television audience starts hearing voices, and likely the people in the arena, I don't see why they wouldn't, they're hearing voices. Now, Kane loses his mind, Big Show hits him with a chair and walks away, and Kane's just laughing, right? So nothing comes of this. But I will say this. The one saving grace of this dumbass intrusion of the May 19 voices was JR. Like, during commentary, he's like, why are we hearing these voices? JR points the absurdity of what the fuck is happening. Nowadays, Matt Hardy can teleport, and like, fucking Tony Schiavone's like, the broken universe, Matt Hardy can teleport. Like, what? These things have to be explained. JR was like, this is stupid. Who's playing the voices? Why are we hearing them? Why are we hearing the internal voices in Kane's head? Nowadays, they'll sit Bailey on a chair, and we have to hear the voices, and Michael Cole is like, oh, that's very disturbing. What is disturbing? How did you hear her voices, cuck? The supernatural things nowadays don't make any sense. Back in the day, when they didn't make sense, oftentimes they did. But when they didn't, like in this case, you had JR to be like, this is fucking stupid. What the hell is happening here? Now, after this match, there was a fun little segment of Vince McMahon and Candice Michelle. Later in the night, it was going to be Vince and Shane, get this, motherfucks, versus Shawn Michaels in a tag team match. Shawn Michaels' partner was none other than God, motherfucks. So anyways, Vince McMahon is in there, and Candice shows up. She has a chest cold. She's like, Mr. McMahon, I hear that you're God. Can you heal me? And he's like, I can heal you. And then she's like basically trying to get him to touch her boobs, right? So he does, and he's like on top of her. And then Shane comes by and cock blocks his own dad. He's like, it's time for our match. What are you doing? And Shane's like, fine. You know what I mean? It was a great comedy segment. Meanwhile, Candice is like orgasming like on the couch. It was pretty good. It was pretty hilarious. And then they go back to the announcers. And King says, he's like, I told you, JR, Mr. McMahon has powers. And then JR's like, what the hell did we just see? What is going on here? What is wrong with these people, right? This was great. It was great comedy, especially JR's reaction. After this, it's time for the longest match of the night. It's Shawn Michaels versus the McMahons. Vince McMahon and the product of his semen, Shane McMahon. Those are Vince's words, not mine, right? The match is about to start. Vince and Shane come out first. As they're out, like God comes out next, right? Quote unquote. And they play this like gospel-y, like angelic music. And Vince says, no, that's not the music that God's gonna enter into. And he's like, let's get jiggy with it. This actually happened. I'm not making this shit up, right? And then they play like funk or like soul music. I can't remember exactly because I got really into it. And Vince McMahon starts dancing like an idiot. God is coming out to like funk, like Parliament funk type shit, right? It was great. Vince McMahon is out there. Lillian Garcia can barely contain her laughter. You know, this was awesome. Shane's looking at him like, what the hell's going on? And Vince is just like really into it, right? The whole point of the storyline was Vince is basically Satan himself, and Vince thinks he's better than God. If you don't think this is a good storyline, then you never seen a good storyline. This storyline and Vince's performance in it is better than everything we've seen in the last 10 years of wrestling combined, in my opinion. After this, Shawn Michaels comes out, the crowd goes nuts. Nobody comes out like Shawn Michaels does. Best entrance of all time, in my opinion. He comes out, everyone's just tuned in, right? The level of charisma that was on display in this match, not just Vince McMahon, because he has crazy charisma too, but Shawn Michaels. Like, I know I can't say that Michaels is underrated because everybody rates him as one of the GOATs, but in terms of like not only his ring performance, but his just natural charisma, right? It's like 10 out of 10. You know, if you had to pick one member of the species of humans who is an absolute stud, it would be Shawn Michaels. Like in the early 90s, late 80s, that Shawn Michaels, it's like, come on. You could just look at him, you're like, this is like the perfect human being. You know? He would say like, all the women want me. It's probably true. Yeah. I understand that's a very high order. We can't capture that with people like Nathan Frazier and Trick Williams, but we need to aim for something like that. We need to aim for like a pretty boy wrestler that fits the bill, that has the requisite charisma. You know, a lot of times people have made the error of comparing someone like Dolph Ziggler, because he's a good looking guy, I guess, with long hair, to Shawn Michaels. They're like, oh, he should have been the next Shawn Michaels. No, he shouldn't have. He doesn't have what it takes. Dolph Ziggler doesn't have the requisite charisma of Shawn Michaels. Carmelo Hayes doesn't have it. Ilya Dragunov doesn't have it. Braun Breaker doesn't have it. Trick Williams doesn't have it. Obafemi doesn't have it. Tony D'Angelo doesn't have it. Nobody has it. And it's not a slight against any of them. This is like 10 out of 10 charisma. Everyone's just glued into Shawn Michaels, even though he's like in his late 30s, early 40s. Probably early 40s at this point, right? So the match starts. And as the match is going on, Shawn Michaels proves once and for all that he is also one of the greatest performers. They have this great match. The match is obviously a handicap match because God doesn't show up. I would have liked it if, like, I don't know, Vince pinned the Bible or something. That would have been funny. But they didn't go that far with it, right? Basically, Shawn Michaels is fighting off like two men. That's the story of this match. He cross-bodies Vince off the stage early. As he's coming back up, Shane hits him with a chair in the head, right? And this kind of discombobulates Michaels a little bit. They move forward with a match, blah, 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 blee, blee, blee. Some more shit goes down. Long story short, there's a part where Shawn Michaels, he's being destroyed during this match, right? He's bleeding from the head, and Vince McMahon knocks him down. Shane is like on the outside somewhere, right? And Vince McMahon's like, come on, get up, you bastard, right? And as Shawn Michaels is getting up, Vince starts tuning up the band for Vince's alternate finisher, motherfucks, the sweet McMahon music. So he's tuning up the band, and he goes for the super kick. Obviously, he can't really do it. Michaels catches the kick. Vince is looking at him like, no, don't do it, right? Michaels throws it down, super kicks Vince, sweet chin music on him. Shane comes out, sweet chin music on Shane. And now Shawn Michaels should have gotten the pin. But because this was like an absolute grudge match, Michaels instead goes, he gets two tables, puts them in the ring, and then puts Vince and Shane on the tables and gets like one of those massive ladders. He climbs a ladder, presumably to like, I don't know, elbow drop them or double splash them or something, right? And then he ends up diving to the outside. You know, you're like, what the fuck? Why is he doing that? Then you see the Spirit Squad. Remember them motherfuckers? The Spirit Squad, which includes future jobber Dolph Ziggler, like they're there because they're like the henchmen of Vince McMahon, and he just dives out and wipes out all of them. You know what I mean? And then as this is like continuing, they get the upper hand and they start beating his ass. The Spirit Squad throws Michaels into the ring. They take off the ladder and one of the tables, and then they beat his ass down, and then eventually hit him with their finishing move, the High Spirits, which is also an underrated move. It's basically all five guys grab Shawn Michaels, like each person grabs a limb, and the other one grabs the head or the body, and they just throw him upwards, right? As high as he can go. It's fucking crazy. And they do that, and they throw him like kind of like at an angle, so he falls on the table. And then Vince pins him, and Vince declares himself better than God, right? Great match, 10 out of 10, 5-star match, considering what it was, right? It's really that simple. The match itself doesn't need to be amazing. The storyline was amazing. Literally, Shawn Michaels was fighting with God on his side, and it wasn't enough against Mr. Vince McMahon, Vincent Kennedy McMahon. This would later serve as the touchstone, right, as the cornerstone in many ways of the reunion of DX, where Triple H also gets screwed by Vince and Shane, and this leads to DX reforming in order to beat up Vince, Shane, the Spirit Squad, and anybody else that might be involved, including the Big Show. So, with all that being said, it's time now for the main event. Like, you couldn't outdo this match, but at this time in wrestling, the main event always had to be, like, serious. So the main event was an excellent match, all things considered, between John Cena, Edge, and Triple H. The storyline of this match is very simple. Cena is the champion. Triple H was the guy that wrestled him at WrestleMania and came up short. Triple H says, I screwed up. This time, I'm not going to screw up. I'm going to beat your ass, John Cena. So, that's kind of the plan, right? Meanwhile, Edge comes out. This is the weeks before, right? They showed this in the vignette. Edge comes out and he's like, look, you lost, Triple H. Back of the line. And he explains that he won. This was the time when Edge was like debuting the Rated R Superstar gimmick. Like he was still in it, like in the early stages of that. And he was with Lita, right? And he explains that he beat Mick Foley, a bona fide Hall of Famer, in like a street fight basically at WrestleMania, which was a great match, by the way, right? And long story short, Edge throws himself into the mix. So we have a triple threat, right? Cena is concerned that like he doesn't need to get pinned. Cena explains that he will win. And the match is about to start. I forgot about another segment. There was a throwaway segment with Eugene and Matt Striker. For what it was okay. Matt Striker is severely underrated. Like, he was great on the mic. He had a good look. And he had a good gimmick, if you ask me, right? He was like this pretentious teacher type who'd always give you advice, right? He's like a Duke Hudson, except he doesn't look like Mr. Beast, and he's not like skinny fat, So anyways, basically Eugene like makes fun of him and puts a booger in his mouth and runs away. For those that don't know, that didn't watch back then, Eugene, if you have any questions about Eugene, look at R-Truth now. R-Truth is the new Eugene, except Eugene's gimmick was that he's retarded. R-Truth's gimmick, he's just a guy called R-Truth who happens to be retarded, right? So that's the only difference. Eugene was presented as a mentally handicapped guy, and also the fact that he's retarded was written into the storyline, whereas R-Truth is just a retard who like they take advantage of in kayfabe, right? He's a retard who they allow to wrestle, which would be illegal. Eugene was a retard that they allowed to wrestle, but he was presented as the nephew of Eric Bischoff, who was the general manager. So it was a case of nepotism, right? The underpinnings were Eugene could never be in wrestling, but because his uncle is Eric Bischoff, he gave him a job to placate his sister, I guess, right? So that's how it was. And Eugene was exactly like R-Truth. He was retarded. He didn't know what was going on, and he used other people's moves. R-Truth does John Cena's moves, and Eugene did The Rock's moves, Triple H's moves, the People's Elbow, the Stunner, the Pedigree, the Rock Bottom. Those were like his finishers. Eugene was pretty fun. I enjoyed that, but the segment was kind of boring. Then, going back to the main event happens. It's a pretty decent match. Like, it's like 15, 20 minutes in that range, right? It was a good match, like for what it was. But the most important element of this match that I think needs to be compared to modern day wrestling is simply the fact that in this main event, you had Edge, Triple H, and John Cena. 3 all-time greats. Wrestling in what is effectively a throwaway pay-per-view, right? This would be the equivalent of nowadays having a triple threat match between Cucky Rhodes, CM Punk, and Seth Rollins, right? And now you can compare literally anyone that I just said in the present day. Cucky, CM Punk, and Rollins to any of the 3 people in this match. They're all inferior to Triple H. They're all inferior to Cena. And they're all inferior to Edge. So there you have it. That's how that went down. Cena wins with like a jackknife pin. After a series of events, Lita comes in with a chair. She tries to swing a Triple H who spine busters her in a very dangerous looking spot. Lita doesn't throw the chair away, so she almost lands like on the edge of a chair if it were perpendicular to the ring, right? It doesn't happen, thank God, but she could have gotten really hurt, Triple H also should have been a bit more careful, but it is what it is. Then Edge spears Triple H. Triple H goes to he gets the sledgehammer, and that doesn't work out. So because Edge spears him, then Edge gets the sledgehammer. That doesn't work out. Triple H comes back in. He's about to pedigree John Cena, who jackknife pins him, right? And that's the end of that. This would then lead to Cena wrestling RVD and all that other shit. But like the point is, John Cena wins again. Edge is thwarted once again. And Triple H is thwarted once again as well. And I will end this retro review with the following conclusion. During the event, there was a time where they had some journalists, some no-name journalists, some no-name WWE reporter, asking fans who they thought they would win. And they had a pretty big cross-section of the culture. They had white people, they got black people, they had some women, they got everybody, right? And everybody there had one thing in common. They all looked like regular motherfucks. If they did it now, it would be a bunch of fat neckbeards with Bullet Club t-shirts. Who do I think is gonna win? Cena, Edge, or Triple H? Well, I don't think any of them can tie the boots of Manami Toyota. Like, shut the fuck up, you know what I mean? That's what you'd hear from these jackoffs, right? But back in the day, these were regular people, and I couldn't help but think, I'm like, man, literally probably none of these motherfucks, I mean, most of them are gonna be like in their 50s now, but like, or maybe even older, but it's like, probably none of them watch wrestling today. You know what I mean? Because it's so bad. Like, they watched because the things were good, and now they don't watch because the things suck. So I give Backlash 2006 a solid 8 out of 10, motherfuckers. But this is a retro review score. So there's no point of comparison yet until next Wednesday. Retro review, motherfuckers. Retro review. So with that being said, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you guys tomorrow when we'll talk about something else. And then I'll also see you again next Wednesday for another episode of Retro Review up in this bitch. Take care of yourselves and go fuck your own mothers. Cuts this.